Do you know the difference between taking blame and taking responsibility? If you're not sure, I think I've got an answer for you. Let's check it out. Welcome back, friends. Hope you're well. Trying something a little bit different today. A little bit further back, zoomed out. More of me. Good or bad, who knows? Subscribe. I can actually fit the whole pillow in. Amazing. If you haven't subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you do. If you get some value and enjoy these videos. Right, let's get into this. Taking blame and taking responsibility. What is the difference? Because it can be so easily confused, the two. They're very similar, but hugely different in their outcome and their, I suppose, psychological effects of doing it. So let's explore taking blame. So blame is a very negative, almost aggressive, and sometimes passive aggressive, depending on how it's delivered. Something happens and you blame somebody else. So that thing that happened is that person's fault. They are to blame. Depending on how it's delivered, it can be very passive aggressive, or it can be very bluntly aggressive, as in you are to blame, it's your fault. Whilst yes, it could be literally somebody's fault that something happened. If somebody slashed your tires on your car, then they are to blame. That's 100% correct. There's no disputing that fact. But this is where the huge but comes in. It's a very different effect on you and the other person when the word blame or that whole idea is used, because blaming someone, it pushes all of the responsibility, and I'll get to that in a moment, onto that person or that thing or that event. And whilst that may be to a degree truthful, I said if someone slashes your tyres, they are to blame, they physically did it. The responsibility angle, it's slightly less black and white on that. So using blame and blaming people for things happening is a very, aggressive or passive aggressive way of dealing with the situation. Something has happened, and for us as humans to process that, we sort of need someone accountable, good or bad. So something great happens to you, you want to thank someone, you want someone to be accountable for that action, so you can thank them and be grateful. And likewise, if something bad happens, you want someone or something to be accountable for that, so you can then sort of process it. It happened because of that, and there's a lot of logic in that. And I'm probably the worst person in the world for using logical thinking always when I really shouldn't be using it. But the point is that logic makes sense. It helps us make sense of the world. That happened because of that. Therefore, that is to blame for that thing happening. That makes sense. We can move on. Doesn't mean we're happy about it or over the, or anything like that, but it allows us to just rationalize and understand it. That happened because of that, or that happened because of that person did that. Simple. But, as I said, the problem with blame is that it doesn't have any depth to it from an emotional processing perspective. It's just, that happened because of that, or that happened because that person did it. There's no reason behind it. There's no emotion. It's logic. Blame is logic. Because of that, yes, you can blame someone or blame something. It doesn't, on the surface initially, problem solved. That's the reason. But it doesn't help you to process it thoroughly, because there's no depth to it, there's no emotion, there's no sort of understanding of why or anything like that. It's just, that happened because of that. Also, one of the worst things is when you blame yourself for something. Blaming yourself for something that's happened is no different from blaming somebody else, except it's even more confusing because, as I said, you haven't got that rationale, you haven't got that emotion, you haven't got that understanding of why it's happened. You just say, that thing happened because I did something or because I didn't do something. And then you sit with that blame, but then you can't make sense of it, even on like a subconscious level, and it kind of just you up completely. The more you blame yourself for things, it's almost like this never-ending downward spiral. I've done it, I'm sure you've done it. Various situations in life, it's a horrible thing to actually do to yourself, even though you may think it's justified and right. That happened because I'm to blame for this situation. That may be factually correct, but it doesn't help you to process it. It's logic, it's black and white, it's binary. There's no emotion, rationale or reasoning behind it, so you can't process it fully. So that just sort of sits with you, almost like indigestion. It just sits with you there, this blame, and doesn't go anywhere because you can't do anything with it. Responsibility, on the other hand, is a sort of a lower level, deeper, more complex version of blame, if you like. I mean, it's probably the worst definition or explanation of that. But with responsibility, there's more reasoning, there's more rationale, there's more emotion, there's more understanding of why that thing happened or why that thing was done, either to you or by you, whatever it is. And so taking responsibility for something is hugely different to blaming yourself, or realizing that someone's responsible for something is very different from blaming them. Even said in a psychological, emotional effect on you, if you blame yourself for a relationship breaking down, that just sits there. It's my fault. I'm to blame. This broke down. Blah blah blah. But then it doesn't go anywhere. It's just sitting there. If you take responsibility, then immediately it opens up almost the thought processes of, okay, I take responsibility for this happening because X, Y, Z. Now, obviously you could say,
I'm to blame because of X, Y, Z.
But that blame is very shallow, very just not there. Whereas responsibilities is more of a complex, emotional characteristic. Is more of an emotional is a more emotional characteristic. And so,
I take responsibility because it was up to me to do this, I didn't do this. It was up to me to do that, I didn't do that.
Or it was that person's responsibility and they didn't do it, but and you kind of, it opens up, there's more complexity to the point, to the argument. And it helps us to understand why something happened, as opposed to just my fault, their fault, done. And that understanding helps you to then process it and go through the emotional journey, roller coaster, if you like, to process that event and then to move through those emotions and get to the other side kind of a better and healthier person, physically and mentally, as opposed to just
sitting with blame and just blame, and it just sits there and just eats away.
Taking responsibility is hugely important on that respect, but actually when you look even more objectively at it, taking responsibility for your life is paramount. You just have to, because every single thing in your life is down to what you decide. What happens to you is down to what you decide. Nobody else has the power to make you think or do anything. You decide it. Now you may think,
oh, this person made me do whatever.
No, this person may have said things and may have kind of implied things or whatever, but then ultimately you decided to do that thing or to take that action. And so you have to take responsibility for your life. Everything in your life is your responsibility. The good and the bad. Everything. We as humans literally decide everything because we've got cognitive thinking. We decide what we do. When you then realize that and take responsibility for everything in your life, as I said, the good and the bad, all the that's happened in your life is your responsibility. You should take responsibility for that and understand why it's happened. Once you take that responsibility, it's actually oddly freeing, because you're not blaming other people, you're not blaming yourself. There's no blame you're taking responsibility and dealing with that and processing that. You know, what could I have done different? What would have been a better way to act in this situation? And whatever it is, you know, maybe doing that thing wasn't the best thing after all, but at the time I wasn't really thinking logically and I did that. You know, whatever it is, taking responsibility for everything you do is so important. And so as soon as you do that, it may feel like you're going to take on the weight of the world on your shoulders because you're just taking responsibility for everything. But understanding that you are responsible for your life is actually then very freeing, because then it opens up the fact that you can literally do anything you want. And this is the whole point, or one of the points of this channel, is to get you to understand that you've got full control over your life and you can do anything you want. It's up to you. No one else has that power, only you. And so hopefully, you know, if you can take anything from this video, is to sort of realize that you do have that power, you do have that control. But it may just be sort of deep and hidden and sort of covered up, and just sort of search deep, search within, and just find that little spark of it, and just sort of nurture that and kind of grow that. And hopefully from that it will grow, and then you'll get to a position where you can make that decision to change your life and to do anything you want and really have the best life you can. Hope you got some value and enjoyed this video. It's quite an emotive subject, I know, and you know, it's another one that I'm very passionate about. And so if you did, as always, hit that like button so it's nice and blue. And comment below, does this resonate with you? Are you sort of someone who takes responsibility for their life, or do you like to just blame other people or blame yourself? And that's such a huge difference between blame and responsibility. So thank you all for coming along this journey. I hope you're liking. Maybe I'm going to see how this works out with this sort of more further back panned out effect. See how it goes. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye for now. Thanks again for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do so down here, and check out my other video down here. And remember, live your best life and profit from that passion. See you next time. Bye bye.